This Karen messed with the wrong person, and the payback was immediate.
Sasha Reynolds, a 32-year-old hospital nurse, had been looking forward to her day off all week. The hospital had been particularly chaotic with the seasonal flu hitting the community hard, leaving her physically and emotionally drained after 5 consecutive 12-hour shifts. With the sun finally breaking through after days of rain, she decided to take her 2 children, Aiden, 7, and Maya, 5, to Oakwood Park, a sprawling green space that served as the neighborhood's social hub. As Sasha spread out a worn checkered blanket under a maple tree, she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to release. Maya immediately raced toward the swings, her pink sneakers kicking up wood chips as she ran, while Aiden hesitated, clutching his action figure before asking permission to join the group of boys playing with a soccer ball nearby. "Go ahead, but stay where I can see you," Sasha called after him, settling back against the tree trunk with a paperback she'd been trying to finish for months. The playground was moderately busy with families from various backgrounds enjoying the weather. Children's laughter mingled with the chirping of birds, creating the peaceful soundtrack Sasha had been craving. She had managed to read exactly 3 pages when the sound of a sharp, insistent voice cut through the pleasant ambience. "Excuse me, but you people are taking up far too much space. This is a public park, not your personal backyard." Sasha looked up to see a woman in her 40s, impeccably dressed in designer sunglasses, a crisp white blouse, and tailored beige pants, standing over a family setting up a modest picnic about 20 feet away. The family, a young couple with 3 children and what appeared to be their grandmother, looked up in confusion at the intrusion. "I'm sorry," the father responded, rising slowly from where he had been unpacking a cooler. "We're just having a family picnic." The woman, later identified as Heather Wilkins from the local homeowners association, gestured dramatically at their blanket and cooler. "This area gets very busy, and you've claimed enough space for 10 people. There are designated picnic areas with tables on the other side of the park. This spot is meant for casual use." Sasha observed the exchange carefully, noting that the Hispanic family's setup was no larger than any other groups in the park. In fact, a group of college students nearby had a much more expansive layout with portable speakers and a slackline tied between trees. "We're only using what we need for our family," the mother explained calmly, though Sasha could see her hands trembling slightly as she continued unpacking sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. "And the picnic area was full when we arrived." Heather's voice rose slightly. "Well, I've never seen you at the neighborhood association meetings, so you probably don't know the proper park etiquette. Are you even from this neighborhood?" The grandmother, who had been quietly arranging fruit on a paper plate, looked up sharply at this question, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. The children stopped their excited chatter, picking up on the tension. "We've lived on Elmwood Drive for 3 years," the father replied, his calm demeanor showing cracks of irritation. "Not that it should matter. This is a public park." 3 years, Heather scoffed. "Well, I've been in Oakwood Estates for 15 years, and I can tell you that families like yours should really use the facilities properly. If you don't move to an appropriate area, I'll have to call park security." The father and mother exchanged glances, clearly weighing whether this confrontation was worth continuing their picnic. Their youngest child, a girl no older than Maya, pressed herself against her mother's side, her earlier excitement visibly dimming. Sasha felt a familiar heat rise in her chest, the same feeling she got when she witnessed injustice in her hospital, whether it was a patient being dismissed or a colleague being mistreated. She checked that both her children were safely occupied, then stood up, brushing grass from her jeans. With her phone discreetly set to record in her back pocket, she walked toward the escalating situation, her heart pounding, but her resolve firm. This bullying behavior couldn't continue, not in a place meant for everyone's enjoyment, and certainly not in front of impressionable children. As she approached, Sasha caught the family's name from their conversation, the Garcias, and noticed how the mother was quietly trying to pack up their barely started picnic rather than continue the confrontation. This only strengthened Sasha's determination to intervene. Without hesitation, Sasha approached the tense situation. She could feel her nursing instincts kicking in. The same calm, authoritative presence she maintained when mediating conflicts between worried family members or dealing with agitated patients. As she drew closer, she noticed Mrs. Garcia's hands trembling as she folded a colorful blanket, while her husband stood with a protective stance, his jaw tight, but his voice measured as he continued trying to reason with Heather. "Excuse me," Sasha said with a friendly but firm tone. "Is everything okay over here?" "I couldn't help but overhear." 3 pairs of eyes turned to her, Heather's narrowed with annoyance at the interruption, while the Garcias held a mixture of surprise and what looked like relief at not facing this confrontation alone. Heather immediately pivoted towards Sasha, her body language shifting as she assessed the newcomer. Her expression changed subtly, seemingly suing Sasha. Another white woman in casual but neat weekend attire would naturally align with her position. Oh, thank goodness, Heather said with an exaggerated sigh. Perhaps you can help explain to these people that they're hogging space during peak hours. I was just telling them there are designated picnic areas for large gatherings. Sasha took a moment to glance around the park, making a deliberate show of surveying the area. Actually, she replied, her voice carrying the same steady tone she used to deliver difficult news to patients' families. I've been sitting over there for the past half hour, and I couldn't help but notice that the Garcia family's setup is completely reasonable. Their blanket takes up less space than most groups here. Heather's expression froze, her mouth slightly open in surprise at not receiving the expected alliance. You don't understand, she pressed, lowering her voice as if sharing confidential information. These people always come and take over. They bring their whole extended families and make so much noise. These people, Sasha repeated, emphasis making it clear she recognized the coded language. I'm not sure what you mean by that. The park rules posted at the entrance specify no amplified music without permits and no blocking of pathways. I don't see the Garcia family breaking any rules. Mr. Garcia looked at Sasha with surprise. How did you know her name? I heard your daughter call you, Sasha explained with a warm smile. I'm Sasha Reynolds. My kids are over at the playground. Maga's on the swings and Aiden's with the soccer group. Mrs. Garcia nodded toward the playground, some of her tension visibly easing. Our Jose is playing soccer too. He's in the red shirt. Heather cut in, her voice rising. This is beside the point. Who are you to interfere in matters that don't concern you? Sasha turned back to Heather, her expression neutral but resolute. With her phone still recording in her pocket, she spoke clearly. Public parks belong to everyone, Ms. Wilkins. Heather Wilkins. I'm on the neighborhood council, she added, lifting her chin slightly. Ms. Wilkins, public parks belong to everyone who uses them respectfully, which the Garcia family is doing. As a neighbor and fellow park user, it absolutely concerns me when someone is being harassed for simply enjoying the park within the rules. The Garcia children had stopped pretending not to listen and were now watching openly from behind their grandmother, who had positioned herself protectively in front of them. The oldest child, a girl of about 12, was holding her phone in a way that suggested she might be recording too. Harassed? Heather sputtered, her voice rising further. How dare you? I am simply enforcing community standards. By now, several nearby park goers had turned their attention to the confrontation. A couple walking their dogs slowed their pace, watching with interest. Two mothers by the sandbox exchanged glances and whispers. Community standards should include treating others with dignity, Sasha responded, maintaining her composure. The Garcias have every right to be here with their family. If you're concerned about park usage, you're welcome to raise it at the next public parks meeting where everyone can participate in the discussion. Mrs. Garcia stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. We don't want any trouble. We just wanted to celebrate our son's birthday. She gestured to a small boy wearing a paper crown who was half hidden behind his older sister. Sasha felt the pang in her chest. Is it your birthday? How wonderful. We should be welcoming celebrations in our community spaces, not discouraging them. Heather's face had flushed a deep red, her designer sunglasses now pushed up into her perfectly highlighted hair. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she hissed, pulling out her own phone with manicured fingers. I have the park supervisor on speed dial. We'll see who's right about the rules. Heather's voice rose to a shrill pitch as she jabbed at her phone screen, her designer bracelets jangling with each movement. You'll all regret this, she announced to no one in particular, though her glare darted between Sasha and the Garcia family. I'm calling Richard right now. He's the head of park security and a personal friend. Sasha maintained her position between Heather and the Garcia family, who had stopped packing up their picnic but remained tense, the children huddled close to their grandmother. The birthday boy's paper crown was now slightly crumpled, his earlier excitement completely overshadowed by the conflict. By all means, Sasha replied evenly, call whoever you need to. In the meantime, perhaps we could all take a breath and remember we're in a public park on a beautiful day. She turned to the Garcia family with a warm smile. Please don't let this interrupt your celebration. Mrs. Garcia hesitated, then nodded, slowly unpacking the items she'd just put away. Mr. Garcia began quietly speaking to his children in Spanish, his tone reassuring as he guided them back to their picnic blanket. Heather, meanwhile, had connected with someone on her phone and was speaking loudly enough to ensure everyone could hear. Richard? Yes, it's Heather Wilkins. I'm at the main lawn area and there's a situation. She walked a few paces away, but her voice carried clearly. There's a large group taking up excessive space. Yes, exactly like last time. No, they're being confrontational. As Heather continued her distorted account of the situation, a small crowd had definitely formed. A young couple who had been playing frisbee now stood at the periphery, the woman recording discreetly on her phone. The bird photographer had moved closer, though his camera now hung unused around his neck. Two other families had paused their activities to watch, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disapproval, directed at Heather, not the Garcias. One of the mothers from the sandbox area approached Sasha. "Is everything okay? We could hear that woman from all the way over there." Before Sasha could respond, a new voice joined the scene. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Everyone turned to see an older man in a park maintenance uniform approaching, his name tag reading Ernest. He looked between the gathered groups with a weary expression that suggested this wasn't his first time mediating park disputes. Heather immediately ended her call and rushed toward him. "Ernest, thank goodness. I was just calling Richard. We have a situation with park regulations being violated." She gestured emphatically toward the Garcia family's picnic. "They'd taken up far too much space during peak hours and refused to relocate when I informed them of the rules." Ernest surveyed the Garcia family's modest setup, then looked at the other picnics around the park, many of which occupied similar or larger spaces. He turned back to Heather with a professionally neutral expression. "Ms. Wilkins, I don't see any violations here. Their setup is well within our usage guidelines. But they have a full birthday party going." Heather protested, pointing at the small cake box and few balloons tied to the family's cooler. "Those require permits and designated areas." Ernest shook his head. "Small family gatherings don't require permits, ma'am. Only events with more than 25 attendees or those using amplified sound." Heather's face contorted with frustration. "This is ridiculous. I know the rules better than anyone. I'm on the neighborhood council." As this exchange continued, a police patrol car pulled up at the park entrance. A uniformed officer stepped out and began walking toward the gathered crowd. "Did someone call the police?" Mrs. Garcia whispered, her face paling as she instinctively moved closer to her children. Sasha was wondering the same thing. Heather had mentioned calling park security, not law enforcement. "I did," said a voice from the crowd. The middle-aged black woman stepped forward. "I was concerned about the harassment I was witnessing. I've seen this kind of situation escalate before." Officer Jenkins, as identified by his nameplate, approached with a measured pace, taking in the scene with practiced observation. "Good afternoon, folks. I received a call about 2 weeks after the park incident. Sasha's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m. on her day off. Despite her body's protest for more sleep, she dragged herself out of bed, knowing she had committed to volunteer at the Oakwood Community Center's monthly free health clinic. As a registered nurse, Sasha offered her services once a month, providing basic health screenings and consultations for community members who lacked health insurance or couldn't afford regular medical care. By 7:15 a.m., she had dropped off her children at her mother's house and arrived at the community center, a modest brick building that served as a hub for various neighborhood services. The clinic wouldn't officially open until 8 o'clock, but volunteers always arrived early to set up the makeshift examination areas, separated by portable dividers in what normally functioned as a multipurpose room. "Morning, Sasha," called Dr. Williams, a semi-retired family physician who supervised the clinic. His salt and pepper hair and warm smile had made him a beloved figure in the community for over 30 years. "We're expecting a full house today. The pharmacy students from State College are coming to do blood pressure screenings too." Sasha tied her hair back and slipped on her scrubs over her t-shirt. "Anything specific you need from me today? Could you help with intake and triage?" Amina's handling registration, but she could use support determining who needs to be seen first. He passed her a clipboard with screening forms. Amina Rahman was a pre-med student who had been volunteering at the clinic for nearly a year. At 22, she wore her hijab with coordinating outfits that managed to be both professional and fashionable. Her quiet efficiency and genuine compassion had quickly made her indispensable to the clinic's operations. The doors opened precisely at 8 o'clock, and within an hour, the waiting area was filled with patients, elderly residents on fixed incomes, young families, and several individuals who appeared to be experiencing homelessness. Sasha and Amina worked smoothly together, processing intake forms and organizing the queue based on medical needs. Around 10:30, just as they were finding their rhythm despite the growing crowd, a sharp voice cut through the controlled chaos of the waiting room. "Excuse me. Hello? I've been waiting for 15 minutes. Sasha looked up to see a well-dressed woman in her 50s standing. Patricia Montgomery's expression shifted subtly when Sasha identified herself as the intake supervisor. She gave Sasha a quick once-over, taking in her practical scrubs and sensible shoes, clearly recalibrating her approach. Finally, someone with authority, Patricia said, her voice lowering but maintaining its edge. "I need to be seen immediately. I have an important lunch with the Chamber of Commerce president, and I can't be late." Sasha nodded attentively, her expression neutral yet firm, the same professional mask she wore when dealing with difficult family members in the hospital. "I understand time constraints can be stressful, Ms. Montgomery." Patricia Montgomery. She straightened her designer blazer, a clear signal of her perceived status. Ms. Montgomery, Sasha continued smoothly as Amina correctly explained, our clinic operates on a first-come, first-served basis, with medical emergencies taking priority. Everyone here has commitments and responsibilities they've arranged around their visit today. Patricia's perfectly penciled eyebrows drew together. But I'm just asking for a quick blood pressure check and flu shot. Surely you can make an exception. An older man waiting nearby with an oxygen tank coughed pointedly. Everyone here needs something that seems quick to them, Sasha explained, gesturing subtly to the waiting room. Mr. Alvarez needs his oxygen saturation checked. Mrs. Chen needs her medication dosage evaluated. The Patel family has 3 children needing wellness checks for school forms. She kept her voice conversational, though it carried in the now quiet waiting area. Each person has arranged childcare, taken time off work, or found transportation to be here. Their time is equally valuable. Patricia's face flushed deeper. But I contribute financially to this center, the Business Association's charity drive, which we deeply appreciate, Sasha interjected smoothly. Those contributions help everyone in this room receive care. She gestured toward the sign and clipboard. I'm happy to add you to our list. The current wait time is approximately 45 minutes. 45 minutes? Patricia's voice rose again. That's absolutely unacceptable. In the private healthcare system, I'd be seen immediately. Amina, who had been quietly continuing her work beside Sasha, spoke up. We do have a private healthcare option available, Ms. Montgomery. Oakwood Medical Group on Maple Street accepts same-day appointments. Their number is posted on our community resource board. Patricia turned her glare back to Amina. Don't be smart with me, girl. I'm here because I support this community service and I expect appropriate treatment in return. Sasha stepped slightly forward, professionally placing herself between Patricia and Amina. Ms. Montgomery, all our volunteers deserve respect, regardless of their age or background. Amina is one of our most valued team members and a future physician. Now, would you like to sign in, or would you prefer to seek care elsewhere today? The direct question hung in the air. Several patients were now watching openly, some with barely concealed satisfaction at seeing the entitled behavior addressed. Patricia's mouth opened and closed twice before she found her next words. I want to speak to Dr. Williams. He knows me personally. Dr. Williams is currently with a patient who has been waiting since 7:30 this morning, Sasha replied. I'm the acting medical supervisor for today's clinic, and I have offered you our available options. What Patricia didn't realize was that during their exchange, Dr. Williams had emerged from an examination room and was standing in the hallway, observing the entire interaction. His presence wasn't immediately obvious from Patricia's angle, but many in the waiting room could see him, his arms crossed and his expression grave. Patricia's voice took on a threatening tone. You clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. I personally know 3 board members of this community center. One phone call and what, Patricia? Dr. Williams asked, stepping fully into view. His normally jovial face was set in lines of disappointment as he approached. What exactly would that phone call accomplish? Patricia spun around, momentarily startled. Robert, thank goodness. Your staff here is being completely unreasonable. I just need a quick. I heard everything. Dr. Williams interrupted, his voice firm but calm. And I'm deeply disappointed. This clinic serves over 200 community members each month, many of whom have no other access to healthcare. Every volunteer here, he gestured to Sasha and Amina, donates their time and expertise to make that possible. Patricia faltered slightly, glancing around at the many eyes now watching her. Sasha is not just staff, Dr. Williams continued. She's a highly respected ICU nurse who, though neither Sasha nor the Garcia family had posted their park encounter online, another witness had shared their video of Heather's behavior. The young bird photographer, Alex Chen, had initially hesitated about sharing the footage he captured. As an amateur wildlife photographer hoping to build a portfolio, he never intended to document human conflicts. But after witnessing Heather's treatment of the Garcia family and Sasha's calm intervention, he felt compelled to share what he'd seen. 3 days after the incident, Alex posted a 4-minute video to his local community Facebook group with a simple caption. Is this how we want to treat our neighbors? Witnessed at Oakwood Park last Saturday. The footage, captured with his professional-grade zoom lens, provided crystal-clear audio and video of the entire exchange. By the following morning, the post had accumulated over 300 comments and was being shared across multiple neighborhood groups. Residents of Oakwood Estates and surrounding communities quickly identified Heather Wilkins as the antagonist. That's the same woman who complained about my grandson's basketball hoop being an eyesore at the HOA meeting, wrote one commenter. She tried to get the community garden project shut down because it would attract the wrong element to the neighborhood, added another. Sasha first learned about the video when a coworker at the hospital showed it to her during a lunch break. Isn't this you? You're becoming a local celebrity, her colleague exclaimed, holding up her phone. Sasha felt her stomach tighten as she watched herself on screen. Though she stood by her actions, she never sought public attention. I just did what anyone should do, she responded, uncomfortable with the growing notoriety. That evening, she received a text message from Mrs. Garcia with a link to the video. Have you seen this? Joseph says you're a superhero now. Thank you again for standing up for us. Meanwhile, across town, a similar scenario was unfolding with the community center incident. A diabetic patient named Eleanor Williams had been recording a video message to her daughter about the free clinic when Patricia Montgomery began her tirade. Eleanor, a retired high school teacher with a strong sense of justice, had continued recording, capturing Patricia's entitled behavior, Amina's professional responses, and Sasha and Dr. Williams' interventions. After consulting with her daughter, who worked in media ethics, Eleanor decided to share the video in the community forum, carefully blurring the faces of other patients but leaving Patricia, Sasha, Amina, and Dr. Williams recognizable. Her post read, "This is how our community volunteers are treated at the free clinic. The young woman in the hijab handled herself with grace while being berated for simply doing her job." Within hours, users connected the dots between the two incidents. Wait, isn't that the same nurse who stood up to that woman at Oakwood Park? The parallel stories began trending in local social media, with residents dubbing Sasha the Karen Whisperer and creating memes celebrating her calm responses to entitled